Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accusing Hamas of backing out of some key elements of the ceasefire and hostage release deal. But Hamas denies that charge. Still, the deal is on hold as the Israeli cabinet won't vote on it until mediators say Hamas has accepted all of the terms of the agreement. And there is concern the deal would allow Hamas to rebuild itself. We'll talk to CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell. Here at home, more fireworks on Capitol Hill as the Democratic senators go after another one of President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet nominees, his choice for Attorney General, Pam Bondi. We'll hear their criticisms and her response. And the battle for free speech online. Some say still more needs to be done, and children need to be protected as well. All those stories and more ahead right now on CBN NewsWatch. I want to begin this half hour in the Middle East, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Hamas has backed out of parts of the hostage release deal and ceasefire, creating what he calls a crisis. And that's led to a delay in the Israeli government potentially approving the agreement. But Hamas denies it has reneged on the plan, although the deal would mean the release of some hostages. There's also concern it could allow Hamas to rebuild. Paul Strand brings us the story. He reports from Jerusalem.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accuses Hamas of making new demands about which Palestinian prisoners will be released in exchange for the hostages in Gaza. He says his security cabinet, slated to vote on the deal today, won't meet until Hamas drops back down. Wednesday, crowds cheered in the streets of Gaza when Qatar's prime minister made the announcement of a ceasefire agreement. If Hamas does drop its objections, the deal's supposed to take effect in 3 stages, with the guns going silent and the first 3 hostages coming out this Sunday, 2 of them Americans. More of the 33 hostages, who are over 50, female, children, or sick, will then be freed every few days in the 6-week-long first stage. Stage 2 will begin after 16 days with more negotiations, which should see the rest of the living hostages freed and the war permanently ended. In exchange, Israel will release around 1,000 Palestinian prisoners, including many terrorists serving life sentences for murdering Israelis. Israel's foreign minister points out it's tough to accept a deal leaving Hamas terrorists in power.
But if we will postpone the decision, we don't know how many of them will survive.
Hostage families are reacting with a combination of joy and dread, rejoicing their relatives may be freed soon, fearful that many may never come back.
I really hope that it won't end with only 33 hostages returning home, but all of them, because everyone must return, both the living and the dead.
Netanyahu first called President-elect Trump to thank him for getting the deal done, and then called President Biden. Both Trump and Biden are taking credit for the now-threatened deal. Trump declared on Truth Social, this epic ceasefire agreement could have only happened as a result of our historic victory in November. Biden says the plan was first advanced by his team, but said the incoming and outgoing White House teams worked side by side.
In these past few days, we've been speaking as one team.
Trump stating his incoming administration will work to make sure Gaza never again becomes a terrorist safe haven. On CBN's Faith Nation, former IDF spokesman Jonathan Conricus objected to the potential deal letting Hamas survive.
Hamas in power means more war, more terror, more instability, more suffering in Gaza, and it means that we're kicking the can down the road and we're not really solving the problem.
Secretary of State nominee Marco Rubio, a strong advocate for Israel, voiced concerns at his hearings Wednesday.
How can any nation state on the planet coexist side by side with a group of savages like Hamas?
As for the deal, yesterday Israel's president called for his government to approve the deal for the sake of the hostages. Paul Strand, CBN News, Jerusalem.
And our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell joins us right here in studio. So Israel and Hamas have been arguing over whether Hamas has backtracked on parts of the deal. What do we know, and is it likely to go ahead?
Well, we do know that historically there's been a lot of issues with Hamas and Israel when they have a ceasefire agreement. Many times in the past, Hamas has broken those those agreements, and that's, I'm sure, why Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Security Cabinet are reluctant to actually seal the deal unless all these issues are worked out right now. So that's a big concern for Israel.
All right. What can you tell us about these Palestinian terrorists who will be released in exchange for the hostages?
Well, Ephraim, that's one of the big issues of the deal for those that are criticizing the deal. Maybe about 1,000 Palestinian prisoners would be released. Many times in the past, and you can look back to 2011, when there was a deal for one IDF soldier, his name was Gilad Shalit. I think there was 1,027 Palestinian prisoners that were released. One of them was Yahya Sinwar, who became the head of Hamas and actually masterminded what happened on October 7th. There was one report I saw that the number of deaths and murders and terror attacks was over 500 of many of these Palestinian prisoners. So it's a big concern. We do know that, according to the agreement, many of them may be sent to Gaza, some of them to other nations. But one of the issues is people are asking, what about the people whose lives may be at risk or may be murdered in a terror attack as a result of leaving maybe 1,000 Palestinian prisoners free?
How serious are the concerns that this deal will allow Hamas to rebuild itself so it can attack Israel again at some point?
You know, Jonathan Conricus made that point in Paul's report. I think that's perhaps one of the main issues for objecting to this deal if Hamas is allowed to rebuild. There were three main goals of Israel when the war began: to destroy Hamas militarily, to never allow Hamas to be able to govern the Gaza Strip again, and also the release of all the prisoners. If this is allowed, one thing it will do is will probably make it reluctant for any of the people on the southern border of Israel next to Gaza to go back and to rebuild. If they know that Hamas is still in existence and still capable and still being rearmed and rebuilding, they won't want to rebuild those communities that have been devastated by October 7th. So that's one of the main issues of the people that look at this deal and say, how can we allow Hamas to go ahead and rebuild? And also, you know, one of the things is that many of the families of the members who have been killed in Gaza are saying, did our sons and daughters die in vain?
Let's talk about the people of Israel for a moment. What's their overall reaction to this deal?
I think there's just a combination of so many emotions. First of all, there's so much anguish. Anguish for the hostages that have been, in prison, in tunnels, being tortured, sexually abused for nearly 15 months. That's one thing. And so the other anguish is that, 33 may be released, but what about the other maybe 60 prisoners? And as I mentioned, many of the people, and they're not as well reported on, but many of the family members that have had loved ones in combat and fallen on the front lines, they'll say, our sons and daughters dying in vain. So it's just an excruciating, I think, is probably a good way to describe the emotions of Israelis that are going through just such a turmoil right now.
Indeed. We hear both the Biden administration and the Trump administration taking credit for this. But how much did Trump's threats about hell to pay if the hostages were not released have in these negotiations? And does Israel believe that the president-elect will support them if they have to take action against Hamas or Hezbollah?
Well, one thing I think that makes this a deal different from the Biden administration to the Trump administration is the guarantee that I think the Trump administration will give to Israel. I was listening to Mike Waltz, who's the incoming national security advisor, last night, and he said, to the Israeli people, make sure that we will not allow Hamas to rebuild and to become another threat. We also heard from Marco Rubio. So there's a really sea change of difference between sort of all the players in the Biden administration, from Antony Blinken to, say, Marco Rubio, makes a huge difference in how they can guarantee what's going to happen. One other thing, Ephraim, I think part of this deal may include Iran. And perhaps there's a way that Prime Minister Netanyahu and President-elect Trump are saying, once this is over, we're going to deal with Iran.
All right, thank you. Our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell, much appreciated. Thank you for your insight, and we continue to pray for you and our team there back on the ground in Israel. Coming up, another contentious day of confirmation hearings on Capitol Hill for President-elect Trump's nominees. This time, Democrats are going after Attorney General nominee Pam Bondi. We're going to hear what they said and her responses. We've got the story for you when we come back. You're watching CBN NewsWatch.
Introducing a brand new way to start your morning. Get your daily quick start from CBN News. A quick read on the important news of the day delivered right to your inbox. Stay current on breaking news, politics, and entertainment. Discover how God is moving around the world and here at home. Plus, get exclusive stories and daily scripture encouragement just for you. Stay informed. Go to quickstart.news and subscribe today.
Another day of confirmation hearings for President-elect Donald Trump's nominees on Capitol Hill and more attacks by Democratic senators, this time against Attorney General nominee Pam Bondi. CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Michelle London has the story.
In kicking off Wednesday's proceedings, Senator Chuck Grassley made it clear that he believes President-elect Trump's choice nominee is highly qualified to become Attorney General and that she'll reestablish DOJ credibility.
Her experience and performance as Attorney General, prosecutor, and community leader speaks volumes about her character and her dedication to the rule of law.
In a room filled with supporters, including 16 family members, the former Florida Attorney General worked to persuade senators that she will make America safe again.
My overriding objective will be to return the Department of Justice to its core mission of keeping Americans safe and vigorously prosecuting criminals. And that includes getting back to basics: gangs, drugs, terrorists, cartels, our border, and our foreign adversaries.
As questioning began, Democrat senators wasted no time addressing their concerns. Senator Dick Durbin focused on Bondi's views on fairness surrounding the 2020 elections.
Do you have any doubts that Joe Biden had the majority of votes, electoral votes, necessary to be elected president in 2020?
I was on the ground in Pennsylvania, and I saw many things there. But do I accept the results? Of course I do. Do I agree with what happened? And I saw so much. No one from either side of the aisle should want there to be any issues with election integrity in our country. We should all want our elections to be free and fair.
Bondi has been a political and legal advocate for Trump, representing him during his first impeachment. Democrat Senator Sheldon Whitehouse also questioned her legal, political, and lobbying background and whether loyalty to Trump would impact her oversight of the Justice Department.
We want to make sure that that's not the case, that you remain independent, that you remain able to and willing to tell the president no when that's necessary to protect the Constitution and the integrity of the department.
Bondi vowed to administer justice with an even hand.
Senator, we've got to bring this country back together. We've got to move forward, or we're going to lose our country.
Bondi received positive comments from top GOP senators like Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz, who touted her great reputation and resume, while others encouraged her to not respond further about Kash Patel, Trump's choice as FBI director.
You've got a great reputation and a great resume, and they are just trying to find things to put your integrity into question.
One tactic Bondi often took that appeared to frustrate a number of her Democrat critics was refusing to answer any hypothetical questions, which often come up during confirmation hearings. Michelle London, CBN News, Washington.
Still ahead, while supporters say Facebook and Instagram are making progress toward allowing more free expression online, some argue more needs to be done to strengthen free speech online so people can openly share their points of view. We're going to have that story for you. It's coming up right after this. Internet free speech advocates are praising Mark Zuckerberg's recent announcement Meta will end its third-party fact-checking programs on Facebook and Instagram and instead use community notes like X, formerly known as Twitter, now does. Even so, some are asking, does Zuckerberg's commitment to free speech go far enough? On this week's episode of The Global Lane, Amy Bos, the Director of Federal and State Affairs at NetChoice, argues Congress must ensure children are protected and government officials should refrain from interfering in online free speech censorship.
it's Meta essentially returning to its roots. We've seen the past 4+ years, government coming in heavy-handed, telling the company that they need to do a better job of taking down content. Americans grew sick and tired of that. They've demanded that the government get out of the speech business, and I think that's what you see here. You see Zuckerberg really announcing a recommitment to free speech principles. They're going to remove or eliminate the fact-checking program. They're going to allow topics, previously controversial topics, to be discussed. I think this is a welcome change, and it's really showing, it's really a trend that we're seeing in the social media space. Started with X and Elon Musk taking over there, but it's really being driven by consumers as well.
Well, here's what Mark Zuckerberg recently told Joe Rogan about the political pressure from the Biden administration to censor Meta content.
Basically, these people from the Biden administration would call up our team and scream at them and curse. And it's like, these documents it's all kind of out there. And basically it just got to this point where we were like, no, we're not gonna take down things that are true.
So, Amy, what do you expect the incoming Trump administration and Congress will do to prevent government officials from pressuring social media platforms to censor political or controversial speech?
Sure. So there's definitely action Congress can and should take. And the first on that list is reintroducing and passing what's called the Protecting Speech from Government Interference Act. This would make it illegal for government employees to coerce social media companies for political purposes. This bill, it's been around during the last Congress. It passed the House along party lines. Unfortunately, Republicans supported and Democrats opposed. This really should not be a partisan issue. The government must get out of the speech business, and I think this bill is a great first start to prevent that censorship that you spoke of.
Well, is there any role for the government to have? I mean, how about legislation to prohibit censorship or require free speech on social media platforms?
Sure. It's a little tricky when you're talking about telling platforms what content they must keep up or what content they should take down. Really what we're seeing with this announcement, this is being driven by the market and by consumers. So we need to get rid of that heavy-handed approach. Again, government is a little limited in what they can tell private companies to do, but it's refreshing to see that that once controversial topics, that we can be able to talk about them. There are, of course, companies still have their terms of service, their rules for their specific platforms. But again, when the government steps in and tells companies what to do, that's where we see those huge First Amendment problems. Yes,
I think I've heard Elon Musk say more content, not less, more speech, not less. So what about efforts to protect? How about efforts to protect children, minors from violent and sexual content, also from predators, child predators online? What's likely to be done there?
Absolutely. So this is a topic that has come up not only before Congress, but states are taking a really close look at it too. And I think you get into some of those same censorship concerns. You don't want the government to come in heavy-handed and determine for kids and for parents, really, what content is harmful or not harmful. I think we need to be really careful when we're asking the government to intervene in those areas. But there are steps that Congress can take, and we need to better empower parents with the parental tools that are available. We need to educate young people and parents, quite frankly, how to use the internet safely, navigate safely. So those are some of the efforts that we've been championing. I would also mention we need to hold bad actors accountable. We see all too often reports going into NCMEC detailing child sexual abuse content that really needs to be taken down, and there just aren't enough resources there. So there's also legislation in Congress called the Invest in Kids Safety Act that would put additional funds towards that effort.
And quickly, I've got to ask you to weigh in on the TikTok ban. Is it set to happen? I think it will happen unless the Supreme Court steps in or ByteDance sells the company by January 19th. So ByteDance warns if the U.S. government can do this to TikTok, it can do it to any company. So your thoughts briefly.
Yeah, I tuned a little bit into the oral arguments the other day. The Supreme Court generally gives Congress some deference here. So hate to make a prediction here. We saw President Trump weighing in, saying we may need more time to talk this through. So we're keeping a close eye on it. But yeah, it will be interesting to see where the court lands on this one.
Okay, Amy Bos of NetChoice, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Also on this week's episode of The Global Lane, Open Doors U.S. unveils its 2025 World Watch List, a look at the world's worst persecutors of Christians and the controversy over the claims climate change caused for the California wildfires. You can see it all on The Global Lane this evening on the CBN News Channel. It begins at 8 Eastern. You can also see it on the CBN News app, or you can watch on YouTube. We're coming right back with an encouraging word for your day ahead. Please stay with us.
Download the CBN News app, 24/7 news from a Christian perspective at home or on the road. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Set daily prayer goals and pray for news stories. Read the most important news and watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Go to cbnnewsapp.com to get the app today.
Get the inside scoop on Washington politics from the DC Debrief podcast. Don't miss this unique CBN News perspective straight from the nation's capital, because truth matters.
Time now for your Thursday Thankful. I invite you to join me in this prayer of gratitude. God, thank you for my righteous position in Christ. Help me to walk that out in practical terms every day. May we all be forever grateful for the position Christ came to give us. There is truly no greater love. And to that prayer, may we all say, amen. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN News. Remember, you can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel. You can find them there at any time, as well as online at cbnnews.com. Take a moment, let us know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. We'll see you tomorrow.